Assalamu alaikum, and welcome everyone to the Gaza Power Hour. Thank you so much for being with us. Global solidarity and mobilization. I'm Janella Massa, and I'm joined here in studio in Toronto, Canada, with Khalid Al-Khazaz from the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, as we come together with people from across continents for one purpose, and that is to keep Gaza alive and in global consciousness and action. Now, the purpose of this program is to call for a mass movement of solidarity and globalization. We've seen over the past months and years that for far too long, pro-Palestinian voices have been silenced and punished. And for too long, that call for liberation has been ignored. This cannot go on with the atrocities inflicted on Gaza in the last 2 years and the continued occupation. We focused on faith in action. We focused on faith in action, solidarity as a sacred duty. That'll be hosted by Mohammed Jalal in the UK. He's the founder of The Thinking Muslim. Followed by that, we'll talk about the case for justice, Gaza and the global conscious. Our host for that segment in the USA, Hazami Barmada, and a former United Nations consultant and organizer of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. And finally, we'll come back here in studio to talk about sailing for justice, the power of collective action. So I want to bring in my guest here in studio, Khalid Al-Khazaz. Thank you so much. You're one of the minds behind today's live stream. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to do this, what your hopes and your goals are with, bringing together this conversation of folks from across the world.
Thank you, Janella, for being with us today, and for all our guests and for everybody who's tuning in. We've all witnessed over the past 2 years people to continue the pressure to continue to protect our brothers and sisters. People to continue the pressure to continue to protect our brothers and sisters. We wanted to get people to continue to mobilize, continue to educate, continue to put the necessary pressure in order to maintain the protection, help Palestinians rebuild their lives, and to actually undo the negative impacts of the pro-Zionist lobby throughout the world. So there's so much to be done. The pressure needs to continue. People need to continue to mobilize, and fortunately continue to mobilize without the same scale of suffering that our brothers and sisters are going on through, even though the ceasefire has been broken multiple times. The second is we've also have been organizing in different capacities, in different communities, in different ways. And we felt that it is time to bring in these different communities who've moved for justice from different backgrounds, from different perspectives, into a same platform, that we hear from one another, we support one another, we inspire one another, and we are able to work together as a collective. And we're able to share and change public opinion together, and we see these different perspectives in action in order to mobilize as much as we can. So this is really why we brought this together, and really we're very fortunate to have our partners, Brother Mohammed Jalal from the Thinking Muslim podcast, Islam 21C, and many other partners from all over the world who actually agreed to this, and agreed to this immediately and instantaneously. So again, thank them all, and hopefully to have a good 2 hours together.
And one more question before we go to our first segment, and we have some amazing guests lined up. For those who are watching, for those who are tuning in, what should we expect from them? Talk a little bit about what they can do as they are tuning into this conversation.
So we meant for this not to be just a listening in opportunity, or an opportunity to be inspired, but an opportunity to do action. So our objective is really to get as much people subscribe to action, commit to action as they listen in. So we're giving them opportunities to engage and to continue to connect now, to participate in campaigns that we launched today, and to commit to action beyond today and moving forward. So some form of work or remote work that they can do. So we've put in these options so that people continue to engage beyond just listening in. And similarly, we have a campaign that Brother Jalal is going to launch in his segment to free one of our guests who was supposed to be with us today. Actually, the first person to confirm to be here today was Brother Sami Hamdi, who was detained by ICE in the United States for speaking for justice, for speaking on Palestine. So we have a campaign on cmpac.wordsofjustice.org to demand the release of Sami Hamdi, and we hope everybody tunes in, everybody participates in this campaign to try to get Sami Hamdi back and Sami Hamdi free, inshallah. So these are two campaigns that we start off with, and every segment we're going to discuss them even further.
And this is on the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs website, that's CMPAC's website. So you can tune in, that's Canadian.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair.
To our viewers, we seem to be having not a great connection with our host in the UK, Mohammed Jalal. I'm going to pick up the conversation in action can really look like. Their prayers echoing beneath the rubble, their belief in justice, truth, and courage. Thank you all so much for being with us. I'm going to take the first question to Shaikh Omar Suleiman. Thank you so much for taking the time. Founder and president of Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research, a globally respected scholar, author, and activist. Thanks so much for being with us. I want to ask, Shaikh, in this moment of crisis, we've seen faith become a comfort. How do you see faith guiding us, not toward despair or passivity, but towards
and then move us towards contributing towards removing that harm. The Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned that for me to walk with my brother in need is better for me than to remain in i'tikaf, remain in seclusion and prayer and devotion in this masjid of mine, this mosque of mine. I think that just the very notion of the power hour, we're taught in our tradition that ash-shuja' sabru sa'a, that courage is your ability to be patient for an hour longer than your enemy. It's being able to outlast your enemy for another hour. Where does that patience come from? That patience comes from knowing that nothing is at loss, that at the end of the day, you have to try to see it through as much as you can in this life, but you know that God will inherit and collect it all and bring it all back together for the world after we're gone, and then for all of us in the hereafter. And so that patience comes from a sense of resilience, and that resilience is rooted in revelation. It's rooted in believing that nothing ever goes to waste. And I'll mention here, because it's very important, that your enemy depends upon, and I'm using strong language on purpose here, right? I mean, your enemy depends upon your deflation, depends upon you getting tired. The idea that we'll come and destroy a house that you've been building for years, or a generational home, that this institution that you've been building, we're going to use pressure, lobbying, and money to buy off politicians and to silence that institution. Your enemy depends upon breaking down what you've built so that you don't try to rebuild again. And if the people of Gaza are showing the determination anyway, that person that's been working on gathering all the facts and presenting these lengthy reports to document the genocide, keep at it. That person that's working on guaranteeing student protection so that they can continue to demonstrate on campus, and that activists can lean into their freedom of speech and the zeal that comes from their youth, then keep at it, right? It's what I tell people right now. Look, Mahmoud Khalil, for example, in the United States, yeah, he got out of prison, but there's a new deportation order on him. right? Like, we have to keep at it. So choose your lane and keep building within that lane, because being demoralized is not an option here. And so that's where faith comes into this. Faith activates you when other people lose all hope and lose nothing else to continue.
People's driving the force to challenge people's driving the force to challenge systems of power.
Absolutely. Jazakumullah khairan for your words, Shaikh Omar, and Jazakumullah khairan to our wonderful hosts. I have always seen faith as not just something that grounds you, or not just seeing the references to justice based on the current time and era that you're living in, but as a divine imperative. It is not a slogan. It is not a passive state of being. It is an active way that really transforms individuals, transforms communities to strive for justice. So for me, faith drives the framework for justice, for resilience, for our sense of being humans. Faith drives us in our ability to not just ground us in the reality of what we're living in, but also helps us sharpen our moral vision. It actually is that faith that we cling to kind of see beyond despair, beyond just the moment, understanding that we all bleed the same color. And as some have tried to build thrones of lies and really have tried to silence individuals who are continuing to speak up for truth, now more than ever, we need to have that moral conviction and recognize just the role that faith has played in the American context, in the world context, in really bringing and forging a bright future, and a bright future that leans towards justice. I think one of the things that we mistake solidarity for, or even standing up for oppression, standing up against oppression, is thinking that we have to wait for heroes and we have to wait for individuals to come and change the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But faith teaches us that we ourselves have to be the vehicles, have to be the catalysts for the change that we want to be able to see. And so in this moment in which we are witnessing individuals such as Brother Sami Hamdi, Brother Yaqub, few others, individuals who have been targeted simply because they refuse to bow down to fear, bow down to intimidation tactics, bow down to the expectation of tyranny, willing individuals to stay silent because they're afraid if they're next or not. These individuals who are being targeted for speaking up against the Israeli oppression, these individuals who are targeted, and there are things that you learn from solidarity across faith and across backgrounds, is that there is this unbreakable spiritual wealth that comes with leaning in, with understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's in control. And our responsibility and our goal is to really kind of believe that divine justice is inevitable, not just possible, is inevitable. So what can we do in the moment that we're living in? We're blessed to live in this current era. What can we do to really stand for truth, is to stand for justice, and to make sure that we are never staying silent. We're never leaning into the fear. And every time we're told, there is tactics, fear tactics, and intimidations being used to silence those who are speaking for Palestinian justice, lean in and say that, what, our fear and our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than anything else that they amass, as we learn from the Quran.
Sheikh Suleiman, we've seen so much unbearable loss.
Here.
Ismahan, I'm not sure if that's a question you can answer at all. Speaking with people who have faced that firsthand unimaginable loss, and maybe the anger that comes from that, and how do we channel that, or how can we find some comfort in these difficult times?
Absolutely. When we look at what's happening in Gaza, when we look at Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan for everyone's patience with these connectivity issues. But beautiful, beautiful conversations happening across folks in different areas, alhamdulillah. One of the things I was saying was looking at the genocides happening in Gaza, we're seeing this unbreakable spiritual strength and this refusal to surrender. And for us in these moments, it is natural to feel a sense of kind of anguish is natural.
You're still here. I still have you.
So I was saying it's natural to feel a sense of anguish, a sense of despair. But one of the things that faith teaches us in these moments is how do you go beyond those feelings to rooting ourselves in action? Because it's easy to feel overwhelmed by systems that are in places of power that sometimes you feel that you don't have the power to push back. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran, and we learn from the seerah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and the examples of the prophets, that change is not just about dependent upon one individual to take that step. Is many individuals taking steps together, uncompromising when it comes to the truth and the principles and our sense of humanity, that we are able to forge a new future together. And I mean that in sincerely, subhanallah. If we learn anything, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, looking at what had happened to the children of Israel at that time, and the oppression that they faced under Pharaoh, he himself was afraid to confront the Pharaoh. He talked about what will be impacting him when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to go forth. And that fear continued, of course, until he really put his trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah spoke to him. This is a prophet that Allah spoke to. And so what we get from this story is it's natural as a human being. But what is also natural is to really understand that the pains that the end of those who oppressed, and the end of those who oppressed, and the future that is promised to those who have the oppressors. I mean, so what has happened to the oppressors, and the future of what has come for the believers and those who have faced oppression, subhanallah. And so in this moment is about steadfastness, is about leaning in with faith. It's about understanding how even for the affair of the believer, that there's khair in it, there's goodness in it, no matter what we experience, and understand a sense of responsibility. There is a reason you are living in this particular era. When we look back at the past,
back on this silencing, Rabbi Linda with us. Back on this silencing, Rabbi Linda with us. Rabbi, just nod if you are with us here and you hear me. Rabbi Linda, are you with us? You can't hear me? Hang on one second. We're just going to have you unmute. If you can unmute Rabbi Linda, we may be able to get you on and hopefully have you join in the conversation. And for those just joining at home, Rabbi Linda Holtzman is the faith leader at Tikkun Olam Havura and faculty Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. She's a trailblazer in interfaith justice movements and has long advocated for Jewish-Palestinian solidarity and for reclaiming the prophetic moral traditions of Judaism from political misuse. And her leadership has bridged compassion, conscience, and collective accountability. Rabbi Linda Holtzman, let's try again and let's see if we've got you at all. I see you're shaking your head, so I'm not sure if we're able to connect with you. Are you able to hear me? Unfortunately, it looks like we're just not able to connect. Hopefully we can get this sound sorted because we do see her on screen. I'm not sure if she is able to hear me or not. So we'll just keep trying behind the scenes to reconnect with some of our guests. But we do want to thank everyone who's joining us on this global Gaza Power Hour, global solidarity and mobilization. We've been having interesting and important conversations about the mass movement of solidarity and mobilization, with pro-Palestinian voices being silenced for far too long and being punished for speaking up, and the call for liberation being ignored, particularly in the last couple of weeks. What comes next and how you can act. And while you're with us, we are encouraging folks to visit the CMPAC website. It's Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council. They are the ones behind today's live stream, ambitious live stream event. As you can see, we are dealing with a number of technical issues, trying to connect with our guests across the globe, trying to, engage in this conversation and keep people mobilized and fighting for justice. A number of calls to action for those who are tuned in and watching. A number of calls to action for those who are tuned in and watching to do their part, whether it is to call for the release of folks like Sami Hamdi who have been detained for speaking out, and as well as a number of initiatives. As my colleagues try to work behind the scenes to reconnect with some of our guests across the globe, I'm going to bring it back here in studio to Khalid El-Khazaz with the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council. This was an ambitious effort that you put together very quickly and brought together a number of different voices. Can you talk a little bit about what those conversations were like and what you hope to achieve with this?
Yes, we're fortunate to have Sheikh Omar Suleiman participate because he's led a very important voice, basically, in explaining to people how do we relate and how do we connect to Gaza from a faith perspective. And the participation here, unfortunately, was quite difficult because of travel of Sheikh Omar and Brother Jalal. So we hope to bring them back again soon. Rabbi Linda is also there. And actually our next recipients who will hopefully react to this email. The second campaign is about really joining this movement and connecting and engaging with initiatives on the ground in Gaza, and basically multiple initiatives in education and culture, in social connections, mental health, and also some relief work that you can participate in. So these are direct connections and direct actions that you can connect with in Gaza. The challenge with connections in multiple places is actually quite interesting, but it's also getting us to really see how people are actually very committed to supporting this call and supporting this effort to mobilize people, inshallah. So I think we will take a short break and then we connect with the next set of guests. We have Dr. Nalinda Pandur from South Africa, and a couple of other activists, inshallah, and they're on call, they're ready, and inshallah just give it a couple of minutes and we'll connect back.
Yes, I think we have Dr. Nalindi Pandur. You mentioned Omar Shakir with Human Rights Watch, Ayad Amawi with the Gaza Relief Committee. We're hoping to connect with them and continue the conversation. So we are going to take a quick break here in Toronto from the studio and hope to connect with our guests and be back in a few moments with the next segment. Welcome back to Gaza Power Hour, Global Solidarity and Mobilization. Thank you so much for your patience as we work through some technical difficulties to try to continue these conversations around the globe about mass movement and solidarity for Gaza. We've been having some conversations with folks about faith in action, and we're going to try one more time to connect with our guest who has been patiently waiting for us, Rabbi Linda Holtzman. Let's see if we are able to connect with her. She's a faith leader with Tikkun Olam Chavura and faculty, Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. Rabbi Linda Holtzman, do I have you with us at this hour? I think we maybe have been able to connect with her. So Rabbi Linda Holtzman, are you with us on the line? Thank you so much. We were speaking with some of your colleagues in the, from different faith communities, and we are so grateful in the Muslim community to have allies like yourself. But I want you to speak very specifically about the Jewish faith and what it says in a moment like this, and how important it is to make that distinction between what we're talking about when we talk about the state of Israel, when we talk about Zionism, and when we talk about the Jewish faith. Because I know there are probably also so many difficult conversations happening within your community at such a difficult time.
As a rabbi, as someone who takes Judaism seriously, it is so clear to me that believing that myth and that being a strong Zionist is the antithesis of being a good Jew. That one cannot possibly be true to a Jewish faith if one sees Israel as Jewish. It's also gotten to me. It's very clear to me that as when I grew up, and it feels to me as if one day I opened my eyes, and suddenly I saw things entirely differently. Suddenly I saw what the state was doing to the Palestinian people, even before the genocide in Gaza, even before any of this. I saw what was happening, and in life, I think you can't see something and then unsee it. Once it's there, it's real. I grew up as a Jew learning that being Jewish meant having a strong moral, ethical voice. The image that was always strongest to me was that of Abraham standing up to God, who was about to destroy the city of Sodom. And Abraham says, wait, if there are 100 decent people, 90 different people, going all the way down to, 10 different people, don't destroy the city. And that model of standing up and speaking truth to power was the model for me of being a Jew. There is also a strong Jewish tradition that is called tochacha, which means that if you see anyone doing something hurtful to another without standing up to them and letting them know what they are doing that's wrong, that what you are doing is absolutely wrong. So, as a Jew, it's my obligation to stand up to the United States and where I'm an American and say very clearly, stop supporting the Israeli government with the military. And it's my obligation to stand up to Israel because they are doing things, saying they're doing them in my name, right? Saying that they're doing them to keep the Jewish people safe. And that just feels like a lie to me. That it's my obligation as a Jew to stand up and say, no, what you're doing is wrong. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I could talk.
Oh no,
I could talk
that's
forever.
I'm so glad that we were able to connect with you and get a chance to hear your voice on this important issue. And speaking also of allyship, you know, I wanted to touch on the issue of anti-Semitism, which is often, I think, weaponized to silence folks, but at the same time, it is a very real and dangerous threat. And so, how can we in the Muslim community make sure that we are speaking up against this, denouncing it, and making those clear distinctions when we're having these conversations?
I think all of us together need to do that. And I appreciate your asking the question. Right now, the anti Semitism that we're feeling in the United States is coming from Christian nationalists, is coming from our very right wing government, is coming from places that are not about Israel Palestine in a way that it claims to be. I'm accused of being anti Semitic all the time. I'm sent emails being told that I'm anti-Semitic. I've given my entire life to work for the Jewish community, and I can tell you that I'm not anti-Semitic. But what I have learned through the years that I think we have all learned is that when we work together to not just combat anti Semitism, but also to combat Islamophobia and to combat all forms of racism, that then we are having some power to combat anti Semitism. That if anything, what the state of Israel is doing is increasing anti Semitism because it is very hard for people to distinguish between what Israel is doing and what the Jewish community is doing. It's vital for me to separate the two, that being a Zionist is not being a Jew, that the state of Israel is not being Jewish. That's not what it's about for me. That there's so much more to Judaism than just Israel. And as you said in your question, that's so insightful, it is being weaponized. It is clearly being used to stand up and say, "Oh, look, there's anti-Semitism," and then accusing anyone who is anti-Zionist of being anti-Semitic because they're doing that conflation of Judaism and Zionism, and they are not conflated. They are not one. The only way to combat anti Semitism is for us to work together and to combat Islamophobia and anti Semitism together, and we need to be doing it as one.
Rabbi, thank you so much for your words and for your patience working through all the technical issues with us, and for staying with us. And I'm so glad we were able to speak. Thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you very much.
And of course, you know, this remains the moment to continue to organize. And we want you to continue to join the movement, to stay connected with campaigns and actions and advocacy and justice in Palestine and beyond. We want to build power, amplify voices, and stand united for human rights, and continue in the spirit of conscious action. So we're moving now to the heart of today's discussion, really, and that is justice. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in our next segment. We're hoping our technical difficulties are behind us and we'll be able to continue our conversation in our next segment. We are going to, inshallah, God willing, take you to Washington, D.C. for the Case for Justice, Gaza and the Global Conscience, that's hosted by Hazami Barmada. I don't hear you, but sometimes I'm not sure if it's just me or if the stream can't hear you as well. So I see your lips moving. I see you there, but I don't hear you, Hazami. I'm going to see if maybe our tech folks can help get you connected. We've got half the battle in that we see you, your frame looks good, you're lit well, but hopefully we can get you connected. Just make sure you're not muted, and let's see if our friends behind the scenes can get you up and running. For those who are joining from home, you are watching Gaza Power Hour, and we are all having to show a little bit of resilience here as we work through our technical challenges, trying to speak with folks, first of all, in lots of different time zones. We discovered today that the UK moved into daylight savings one day before Canada. We've got our daylight savings tomorrow, and the UK's got their daylight savings today, which means that we actually were an hour different than what we were anticipating, not realizing that daylight savings was happening a day apart between Canada and the UK. So working through lots of technical difficulties, but just a reminder for folks at home that the purpose of this program is a call for mass movement of solidarity and mobilization with Palestinian voices being silenced and punished for too long, and that call for liberation being ignored. We've been watching those atrocities in Gaza and the West Bank for 2 years. And of course, we know this didn't start in 2023. We know that our brothers and sisters have been facing injustice for decades. We're going to try again with our host in Washington, Hazami Barmada, who's going to take us into our segment on the case for justice with Gaza and the global conscience.
I always say that technology is both a blessing and a curse, and I happen to always get the curse side of it myself. So here we are. I think you all can hear me, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue. But thank you to everybody for joining from wherever you are in the world. This is indeed a very timely and critical conversation to be having. I am very honored to be moderating a panel called The Case for Justice, Gaza and the Global Consciousness. And what we've seen over the last 2 years is unimaginable suffering taking place in Gaza, genocide, mass civilian casualties, the complete destruction of infrastructure from hospitals to housing to water plants to electrical facilities to homes. And the ongoing struggle for accountability and justice has not even begun. But beyond numbers, these are humans. I want to remind people that these are families and children and parents and doctors and journalists who are not only risking their lives to continue to document their live stream genocide, but are also being targeted for simply having the courage to tell the truth and to work for the rehabilitation and support of people in Gaza. This segment, I am very honored to be joined by people who are not only documenting the injustice, but are also challenging it and challenging the global silence and lack of action to bring justice and to stop the genocide that is currently ongoing. I do not think I have all my speakers with me, but I will introduce the two that I do see. Currently, we have Omar Shaikh, who is the Israel and Palestine Director at Human Rights Watch, whose work has been central in investigating war crimes and human rights violations. Welcome, Omar. And we also have Iyad Hamawi, who is from the Gaza Relief Committee. He's on the ground physically in Gaza, facing directly the aggression and inhumanity of Israel, while also trying to bring relief to Palestinians that are being attacked daily and are struggling to cope with basic living. And I believe if we can pipe her in, we also will be joined by Dr. Nadeli Pandur, who's South Africa's former Minister of International Relations, but I will introduce her if we can get her on. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start our conversation and quickly will introduce myself. My name is Hazami Barmada. I'm a Palestinian Syrian-American social innovator and human rights advocate based in Washington, D.C. I want to explore with my speakers what justice actually means in the current context. I think for a lot of people, we are seeing justice as this abstract term. We are seeing that the entities that are supposed to be tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that genocides do not happen and ensuring there's accountability are not only failing in their duty, but are actually actively part of perpetuating the ongoing atrocities against the Palestinian people. So I'm going to start with you, Omar. Despite the repression, something is changing around the world today. From South Africa to the US college campuses, people are naming apartheid and genocide. The media is obviously lacking behind and hasn't quite gotten there with regards to being able to openly acknowledge what is happening. But I want to ask you, as somebody who's been studying what is happening and documenting some of it, what are you seeing in the shift today? And also kind of tell us a little bit more about what you're documenting and how that's contributing to the larger narrative change.
Yeah, I mean, great to see you, Hazami, and many others. And thanks for everybody taking time on their Saturday to talk about Gaza. My concern has always been that when a ceasefire, between quotes, comes into place, that people's attentions will shift elsewhere. But this is precisely the moment, as has been said, that we need to keep the focus and eyes on Palestine and on Gaza. So, I mean, I think I want to answer your question in sort of two ways, right? I mean, just the bigger picture, and I can talk about maybe Human Rights Watch after that. If you were to have told me, 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago that we would be in a world in which the International Criminal Court has indicted Israel's prime minister and former defense minister, where that the International Court of Justice is hearing a case on genocide and has issued binding measures to protect Palestinians from genocide. If you were to have told me a number of states have cut arms to Israel, some have entirely cut arms, some have reduced the arms shipments. Pretty much most of the countries in the world, sans the United States, and even the United States did to a very limited degree, briefly under the Biden administration, again, as problematic as that was. If you were to have told me that there would be sanctions that a number of states had issued against Israeli government officials, some states, some including even Prime Minister Netanyahu, but other leading government ministers. If you were to have told me that Israel would now be on the UN list of shame for abuses against children, if you were to have told me that the International Court of Justice would have issued an advisory opinion that found the occupation unlawful, that Israel is committing apartheid, I could go down the list of things. I could talk for another 10 minutes, but the point is the list of things happening, and it's not happening in a vacuum. It's happening because of the solidarity and actions around the world, the protests that people have been taking to the street, because certainly we know of the deep complicity of governments in these abuses and their unwillingness, despite the massive amount of slaughter and starvation and displacement and destruction on the ground. But there has been a shift. Now, if you also were to have told me 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago that the majority of Gaza's homes and schools and hospitals, the vast majority, would have been damaged and destroyed, that well over 60,000 people, the majority women and children, have been killed, and likely, by the way, much more than that. If you were to have told me that Gaza would have been starved to the point that a famine had been declared, I mean, people forget that Gaza is an urban setting, a very educated population. For famine, that's the result of a man-made decision. If you were to have told me that the entire population would have been displaced, if you were to have told me that large parts of Gaza would have been fully ethnically cleansed and razed to the ground, I also wouldn't have believed you. And if I put those two things on a scale, unfortunately, the abuses are much heavier than the actions that have been taken. Much more could have and should have been taken. That said, I think there is a consensus around genocide around Israel's commission of genocide against Palestinians. And it's not just genocide, right? I mean, Human Rights Watch has also documented war crimes, including gunning down Palestinians seeking food aid, including the use of starvation of civilians as a weapon of war. We documented that from December of 2023. Crimes against humanity, including extermination and forced displacement. The list goes on and on and on. So the documentation is there. There are shifts happening, but it's not happening fast enough to actually achieve the ultimate objectives, which are obviously stopping the slaughter and the slow and fast death, protecting civilians, getting accountability and justice, and addressing sort of root causes, because obviously this didn't begin on October 7th. So I could say a lot more, but we have some fantastic other speakers, including in Gaza, so I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Omar. And I think it's a really important thing to acknowledge is that the tides are shifting, but it hasn't shifted quick enough to end the injustice that we're seeing now, the real cost of inaction of the world. And while it is important that the conversation is changing, what is not changing is the consequences of global silence and inaction on the ground. Ayad, you are Gaza. You're at the heart of Gaza right now as we speak. And we hear words like, ceasefire and aid. And those things no longer mean safety to people. They no longer mean security. They no longer have any weight for a lot of people. I'm going to ask you, specifically to address not only what is happening on the ground in Gaza today, but what does resilience mean in that reality where the world is failing, where institutions are failing, yet people in Gaza continue to show up surrounded by devastation and loss, yet they continue to innovate, they continue to create, and they continue to endure. Talk to us about that.
Thank you, Azami, and I hope you are all my colleagues. Thank you for your time, and really, your voice reaches our heart, and really, you show your life conscience. Show for us here that you haven't forgotten Gaza, you haven't forgotten our children, our injuries, our suffering. Really, we appreciated your attendance. I'm Yad Al-Amawi from Gaza Relief Committee and also representative for Children at Number, who is responsible for evacuating children from Gaza within the genocide. Yes, I thank you and thank all of my colleagues that talk about the suffering. What you asked me about.
And yet, I am so sorry to stop you. I think our Zoom link is actually going to end in 30 seconds, and I believe we are going to restart the Zoom link, and I do not want your words to cut off in the middle of them. So I'm going to just ask our hosts here if they can restart our Zoom link, and we will be.
And we are back here in studio. Thanks for that. Everyone knows what it's like to be in a meeting and the Zoom is about to end. So we appreciate your patience as we get all of our folks reconnected in studio, reconnected remotely to continue that very important conversation. We heard there Hazami talking with her guests about the continued action, the continued need for mobilization, particularly in the face of what was supposed to be a ceasefire, but we saw so many deaths continued, so much violence continuing, and really what we're talking about here is the global need, the need for that global outcry, the need for communities to call for action and call for justice. While we're waiting for our guests to reconnect, I'm going to bring back in my guest here in studio, Khalid Al-Khazaz, with the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council and one of the people behind this live stream and behind this important conversation. How important was it for you to bring voices from Gaza to be part of this conversation?
I think this is key. This is a conversation that revolves around what is happening in Gaza. This is the outcry, the commitment, the calls for justice, and whatever you imagine, however we imagine it, however we see it, even on screen, it is very different for those who are actually living it. We're seeing it live, who have direct family, who are unable to feel safe in the evening, or make their kids feel safe, or make their kids full, or have any attempt to think about what is the future holds for us. So really, it's a different perspective. Whatever we can imagine is really very different from reality, and it's much more difficult. So voices for Gaza are quite important. And Brother Iyad here was one of those important voices that connected across the world with different news agencies. And it's important really to have this as an important part of our conversation. And we also have different angles. I spoke to Brother Omar Shakir from Human Rights Watch, and he actually has been documenting this from day one, speaking to voices of Gaza, documenting the atrocities, documenting their experiences, and bringing that angle and that verification that is necessary for our advocacy. When Human Rights Watch issued the report, whether on the atrocities or whether on it being a genocide or an apartheid situation, this is what actually helped us advocate on the political scene, because they have a certain level of credibility. And when Lady Dr. Pandur actually took that case to the International Court of Justice, changed the entire landscape in terms of a legal framework that international legal framework that everybody can relate to. And I think the advocacy that everybody was involved in actually achieving a Palestinian state also creates a new reality that we can work with. And I'm anxious to hear really from our speakers here, how can we use the human rights documentation, the new legal framework, the new situation with a recognized Palestinian state into actually integrate it into our advocacy and increase the amount of commitment from different state players into this conversation.
And remind us here about all of the different ways that people can get involved. We've got a number of advocacy initiatives. It's not just about conversations. It's not just for folks at home to listen in and tune in, but there are actually things that they can do. And you're hoping to kind of mobilize and keep people engaged. Talk to us about some of the initiatives that you have going on that you're encouraging folks at home to get involved with.
Okay, so we've put on our website a simple way to join our movement through the links, through the link here, basically to a simple form that basically gets you to subscribe to all updates on mobilization, on engaging on different initiatives. Our first campaign here is a campaign to free Sami Hamdi, so you simply click here and you will be able to support the calls for his release. And then we have direct initiatives for people to engage on Gaza and basically engage directly. So we have an initiative on actually simply speaking to the people of Gaza. We're not talking to them as just subjects, but as friends, as people who have aspirations and dreams, and we connect with them directly. We can volunteer to help them improve their skills, whether language skills and others. And others have put initiatives to get them to be able to work remotely and to even engage in art and creative and storytelling and so on. So we've put together some initiatives that can help basically you connect directly for Gaza. So our mobilization is not only a mobilization about just collecting funds or talking about an abstract concept, but actually directly connecting with people in Gaza. Right. And you can do this simply by signing in the form.
Thank you so much, Khalid, for a reminder about those important initiatives. And it looks like our friends are back online. So we're going to send it back to Hazami to continue the conversation from Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much. Brother Ayad Ammawi was speaking to us from Gaza, giving us more context about the current situation. Sorry to have cut you off there, Ayad. The floor is all yours. You're muted, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazami, and my colleagues again. Yes, we appreciated your attendance also. It's not easy for us to live with these conditions under the genocide for more than 700 days. But from my side of view, your solidarity, your support, your alive conscience push us and let us have a resilience here in Gaza. Your efforts has really touched our hearts and touched our souls, and we touch your conscience and your support and your stand at every moment. We hope these efforts mobilize our suffering and achieve all of the political sides to increase the pressure over the government of occupation to stop the genocide. You know, there's no real ceasefire up to this moment. When I talk to you, I hear the explosions and they complete their bad missions to destroy the remaining homes in the eastern part of the Gaza Strip. So when we talk about the ceasefire, they use a deception manner to keep going, starving us, let us suffering from famine, from chaos, from starvation, from shadow economy also. All of these sufferings that made by their hands, and they from day to day they choose a lot of targets, and they at the last operations they attacked us. Yeah, hello.
كمل يا أخي.
Yeah. And they targeted more than 100 targets. They caused more than 100 martyrs, and half of them children. and caused dozens of severe injuries within the last few days. So when we talk about the ceasefire, it's just a play, and they play a game. And when we talk what's our needs now, urgently, Gaza is still suffering from the huge catastrophe. No one can imagine when the winter is entering Gaza. I expect, from my position as aid coordinator and NGOs coordinator, we will face hundreds of deaths and injuries flooded by waters and sewage waters. Look, my colleagues, the catastrophe is past what we can describe. Everything is completely destroyed. When they systematically, by very well calculated policy, they destroy the infrastructures, they need to let the environment infectious. When they close all of the 14 cross points within the fenced border and open just only one cross point, Karam Abu Salim, they fully control every amount by the quality, by the number, by the type, and to prevent the nutritious food. What the meanings? They need to starve our children and to cause immune system diseases for a long time and to lose our next generations. This is the equations. They very well calculated it to let us suffer for a long time with the next generations. And when they destroy all of the infrastructures, what the meaning of destroying universities, schools, and preventing our children from attending and continuing their education life? They need to let us suffer from chaos. When they made the chaos and they re-engineering the chaos and managing the famine with another shape, today they just entering 89 trucks with some aids with the little amount of tents. And for the technical clarifications, they mentioned to our local sources, they haven't ability to entering more trucks. The reality here, they need to winter to entering and to prevent entering tents and shelters and mobile homes to let us suffer more and worsening the situation. When we talk about water, Hasman, my colleagues, we have a shortage in the sweet water that no one can meet. What's the meaning of shortage of water? Up to date, we lost more than 25 underground beer here under the ground water. You can imagine when we talk about sewage water, it's just entering deeply after they exploded the surface of air by explosive robotics with more than 2 tons of high explosive materials. What's the damage under the ground and over the ground? It's completely destroyed the life sign. And also, they destroy the agriculture and farmers, preventing them. What's the meaning of the yellow line? They need to prevent the farmers from entering and farming our lands again and to renew hope for our civilians here. And also, for a lot of hidden reasons, they prevent nutritious foods and cause a lot of immune system dysfunctioning for children. And as a representative for children and numbers, we are responsible for evacuating more than 300 babies within the genocide. Really, I witnessed a lot of our babies have emaciated bodies, suffering from famine, yellow face. No one can imagine what's the meaning to put our children under this pressure with the different horrors and tragedies and talking about ceasefire. The meaning of ceasefire is reopening all of the cross points. The meaning of ceasefire is opening Rafah cross point and granting permissions without restrictions, entering trucks and aids and especially tents. Our needs nowadays, we need more than 300,000 tents urgently to prevent a catastrophe from entering winters. So when we talk about a genocide against humanity, it's still happening now. And Gaza need your support, your mobilization, your talk, your stance. No one can imagine what's the next time we'll face and what we will face this. No one can imagine what's the meaning of open a fracture for a lot of injuries. They're still waiting medical evacuation, still waiting reopening Rafah cross point from the Israeli occupation side. As occupation power, their responsibility to reopen all of the crossroads and implement the humanitarian protocols and to save what we can save. We have no time, Hazima and my colleagues, and thank you again, and will grant you time to return to my colleagues, and thank you again.
And thank you, Ayad. I mean, it's just heart-wrenching. We hear these live testimonies. We've seen the videos. We've seen the photos. We've seen the documentation. We've heard every major human rights organization in the world, every major institution has acknowledged what is happening, has identified what's happening, yet we can't seem to stop it. And I'm going to turn to Dr. Pandur. I introduced her earlier, but I'm going to reintroduce her. She's South Africa's former Minister of International Relations and became the face of the ICJ case accusing Israel of genocide. And Dr. Pandur, welcome. You led one of the most historic moments in modern diplomacy when South Africa stood before the ICJ accusing Israel of genocide, something that a lot of the world not only refused to do, but were covering up for it. They were going a step beyond that and actually enabling Israel's atrocities. You know, many called this moral courage. Others called it political suicide. And we're hearing now testimony from Ayad on the ground in Gaza. I mean, what we're hearing out of Gaza does not even amount to the truth of what is actually happening, that we are not even hearing about the torture that's happening in prisons, in detention centers, the inhumanity that truly knows no bounds. I'm going to ask you, Dr. Pandur, to reflect on what it means to take a stand in the current political environment where the very systems that were set up to prevent these atrocities have been sheltering for them and enabling them. Please talk to us about your experience and what it means to challenge these systems.
Well, good day to you, and thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you to the hosts of the Gaza Hour for inviting me to participate. I think that taking a stand is extremely important in today's world because we are a world that agreed many decades ago that we would act in concert to protect those who are oppressed and vulnerable. This is why we framed international law. International law commits all of us to a standard of practice that should apply to every human being. International law means that each one of us must be ready as part of the global community to stand up in support of those who are experiencing oppression. I'm actually quite disgusted at the degree to which the world has been silent in the face of the terrible onslaught against the people of Gaza and of the occupied Palestinian territories. And I think really one needs to just repeat the call that we expect everybody to stand up to make international law a practical reality for all of humanity. And I express my deep appreciation to those in civil society who have been so active, particularly the youth who have stood up bravely against the might of the security forces in our various countries and have marched in protest in support of Palestine. We need to do much more in order to succeed. And I hope that programs such as this one really begin to solidify a global international solidarity movement that will mount major campaigns that will ensure that the people of Palestine become free. We need to be mounting an international campaign for the freedom of all political prisoners, for the freeing of Mustafa Barghouti. We need to stand up and speak as one, as the global community, as we did against apartheid South Africa. And when we stand up, we must realize that those who practice evil, those who practice genocide, they wish to practice terror on each of us to make us afraid of standing up in support of the oppressed. They will kill, they will maim, they will torture. But we need to multiply our forces in opposition to this genocide, in opposition to this oppression. And it's only when we stand together as humanity that international law works. It doesn't work when just one country calls it up. All of us as the globe who have sat as member states in the United Nations and voted on significant treaties and conventions, we need to show that those treaties mean something by being ready to stand up as South Africa did, to use international law to challenge perpetrators when they abuse human beings.
And that's a very powerful point. And I know there's a lot of conversation happening around, for example, the Uniting for Peace resolution and that being a potential mechanism in order to circumvent the US veto and occupation, in essence, of the UN Security Council. But a lot of what you're talking about also requires documentation and making sure that we are holding people to account. Omar, I want to come over to you. Some of what we're seeing right now is documentation of war crimes. And we are seeing, for example, the collective punishment of civilians, attacks against civilians. Right now, today, I was reading an article about Israel being more upset that someone leaked a video of torture of Palestinian prisoner or hostage, rather, a captive, than the fact that he was actually sexually and physically assaulted and abused while in captivity. I want to ask you specifically about accountability and justice and what that looks like in a framework of an ongoing genocide. What role does this documentation play in accountability, and how can we start to think about accountability when we're still in the midst of the destruction and chaos?
Yeah, look, I think accountability and justice has to mean multiple things. I think we can, I mean, everybody thinks accountability and rightfully thinks about wrongdoers facing their day in court. And that is very much the heart of it. But I think there are a couple of different things to talk about here. I mean, I think one, I'll list three or four points. One is, I think, recognizing that this fragile ceasefire, yes, it brought the prospect of relief for Palestinians in Gaza, less intensity, but as we heard very, very eloquently from Ayad, certainly not an end to it by any stretch of the imagination. So I think part of dealing with justice and accountability is to stop all the abuses in real time and protect civilians. So that means obviously ensuring that aid freely flows in, ensuring that services. I mean, you heard about water. I mean, it's just Human Rights Watch had an entire documentation about access to water, and it's not just that Israel's cut access to pipe water. It's the deliberate destruction of water infrastructure. It is the blocking of repairs to the water infrastructure. It is all sorts of measures that led us to conclude that the Israeli government was creating conditions of life designed to destroy the Palestinian people in whole or in part, which is the core of genocide. So there's that aspect of it. There's also ensuring that Palestinian communities can return, that rebuilding of their homes and schools takes place. And that, of course, we're dealing with the larger context, right, in terms of like the movement restrictions. And we don't forget about the West Bank, of course, where we continue to see really, really grave abuses, including rampant state-sanctioned settler violence, killings of Palestinians, displacement, abuses in detention. So I think part one is you have to sort of, and to be able to stop those abuses, documenting them and pulling the right levers of pressure are really critical. And I can talk much more about that. I think another part of it is dealing with root causes. We can't simply get ourselves in the mind of, let's just, of the moment. We have to remember Israel's apartheid and persecution of Palestinians, which existed on October 6th. We have to remember the closure and blockade of Gaza. We have to remember that Gaza's population is majority refugee. This is a population that has a right to return to the homes that they've been denied to. If you don't start your conversation by remembering that most of Gaza are refugees, you don't understand, the one and two here. So I think if we take those issues off the table, if we take out the 50 plus year occupation, if you take out the closure, if you take out apartheid, if you take out the return of refugees, if you take out the larger repression of Palestinians, you're not having justice, because justice, can't be built. No peace agreement can be built on denying fundamental rights. And then, of course, you get to the piece about, you get the piece about accountability. There's one other element that I'll get to after that, which means you need the research to be able to hold people accountable, because The law is different than what you see on TV. We all see the destruction on TV, but to be able to pin, war crimes under the law or crimes against humanity, you have to meet very high evidentiary thresholds. You have to show that an attack was indiscriminate or disproportionate, and our eyes don't lie to us, but at the same time, that's not evidence in court. You need to underscore that there was no, military target. If there was a target, it was disproportionate. Or you need to show that starvation was a deliberate policy. Or you need to show that displacement orders didn't comply with the international humanitarian law framework. And that has to be built on research. So when South Africa brought the case they did against Israel on genocide, they had an incredibly powerful brief that was built on facts. They cited Human Rights Watch, they cited many other human rights organizations, and that's the reason, why the court issued the binding provisional measures, which of course Israel is ignoring outright, but you need to have the factual documentation. It's very hard because Palestinian human rights defenders in Gaza are themselves facing all the difficult conditions we talk about. So you need to be able, in the absence, and the reporters can't go in, investigators can't go in. So you're relying on open source, on satellite imagery analysis, on virtual interviews. And the last thing I'll say, because again, I want to hear from our other speakers, is part of justice is ending complicity. Right? So it's ending complicity, not only of countries that are supplying arms, but also companies, right? Corporations that are providing the Israeli military with technology, that are operating in occupied territory. So I think justice means all those things. It means civilian protection, atrocity prevention. It means dealing with root causes. It means accountability in the courts and otherwise, by the way, not just at the ICC, under universal jurisdiction in courts around the world. And finally, it means ending all forms of complicity in these abuses.
Dr. Pandor, I'm going to come back to you because Ayad, I want you to be our final word. It only makes sense that we end with the voice from Gaza. So, Dr. Pandor, I'm going to ask you. We're talking and we're hearing Omar talking about kind of international law and the importance of kind of the process for accountability. We're also seeing mass global surge of people around the world that are outraged by the atrocities that they're seeing unfold on their mobile phones, but also feeling like their governments and their systems are not reflecting the will of the people. We the people is part of so many preambles around the world and also the UN, charter, but yet we the people seems to not have weight when it comes to these systems that continue to favor political power and favor businesses and corporate power over the will of the people. I want to ask you, what mechanisms and political strategies can we start to think about as we leave this conversation with how can we put we the people back into these systems, and where does it make sense to build alternative systems in order to push for the end to the genocide and freedom and justice for Palestine?
Well, I think that one of the first things is we need to convince everybody that what is happening is wrong. And that means educating the broader public. We're not doing enough about persuading many more millions to join the struggle against apartheid Israel and the struggle for the freedom and justice for the people of Palestine. So I think communication and broader public education is extremely important. I believe, as I said earlier, that there's an emergent global movement, but there is insufficient coordination of the value that is inherent in such a global awakening. We need to be talking coordinated campaigns. We need to have joint strikes, joint boycotts, joint stayaways. If we can work at that level, the pressure will become so intense that governments that are currently the backers will be compelled seeking solutions. But without that pressure, which we have an apartheid, we are not going to get the level of fire. The foundations are there. It's now drawing in organizations that will make good on that foundation, that will help coordinate and develop a coherent global campaign that gives us a big push toward freedom. I believe that this is necessary. I agree on the matter of data, and we benefited from human rights organizations in Palestine as well as human rights organizations working bravely in apartheid Israel, and UN bodies that were able to provide us with huge amounts of data. It is important that we consistently collect it, because often what happens is when you reach a settlement, then people think you must forget. I would want to encourage the freedom-loving people of Palestine to ensure that once freedom
I think we lost you there, Dr. Pander. I think we have lost you. And when we get you back, I think we might have you back. I think you were just wrapping up your thought there, Dr. Pander. We can hear you again if you want to just complete your thought there.
essentially, I was concluding by saying that one of the things we need to do, given the data and information that we have collected, once we have reached a situation where we believe we can negotiate a proper settlement, we must ensure that settlement includes the perpetrators of genocide facing justice. They must not be allowed to get away with the crimes against humanity that they have. But we all have to agree as the global community that once freedom is achieved, we will ensure justice.
Indeed. And on that note, Ayad, we will work to ensure justice. Ayad, I want to come to you to close us out here, please. You know, the world continues to rally its support around Gaza, yet no matter what we do, it seems like we are not doing enough. And we keep seeing, you know, failed agreements and failed promises. People like you keep showing up every single day. Bisan and various others keep reporting every single day. What keeps you grounded in hope? And what is your message to everybody who's watching from around the world around what they can do and how we can be better allies to the people of Gaza?
Yeah, thank you. This is a big question, but I need to add something very important to my colleagues, Omar. When we talk about preventing, aiding Gaza and supporting Gaza, when you talk about UNRWA, the meaning of preventing UNRWA, and it's not administrative request, it's a humanitarian needs. So this is very important to increase the pressure to grant UNRWA and resuming their works urgently. As a refugee from old Palestine, 1948, I recognize what's the meaning of UNRWA work here. Without resumption of UNRWA work, there is no real relief for Gaza. So the Israeli Knesset, they announced the prevention for UNRWA to work again in Gaza. They know what's the meaning of working UNRWA here over the ground. So from my perspective and from my aid workers and NGOs coordinators, we must pressure over the occupation government to let UNRWA work. And I know they will grant us dignity and provide our people with the fairness distributions and with our special needs urgently. They have a capacity, they have hundreds of warehouses for distribution systems. They try to find alternative solutions like GHF. It's a death trap, and no one can recognize a tangible change over the ground, even though the ceasefire is implemented. So what's the need? Gaza doesn't need just pity. It needs continuous struggle and genuine humanitarian support. Continue your positions and your efforts, my colleagues, and religious and humanitarian duty rooted in living conscience and also responsibility toward what's happening here. Gaza needs your voice and to remain loud and your pressure constant as the world is beginning to forget. You know, the Israeli used the ceasefire as a deception manner to pass their roadmap to destroy Gaza and to expel us from our land here. So I will summarize the 7 basic needs now, if you hope to listen it, my colleagues. The first things, immediate humanitarian interventions to bring tents, especially before the entering winter, opening the Rafah cross point urgently to evacuate thousands of children and injuries who are still waiting from long time ago, And third, urgent relief for 45,000 of orphans and compensate for them. No one can take care for this account of orphans without intervention from the countries and UNRWA from our big organizations in the international community. And for deployment of specialized medical team for preventing infections here and to control infections here in Gaza after the infectious environment is still ongoing. Entry of technical team to test contaminant of water and to test what's the new disease is in our water. Provision of large quantities of safe drinking water also to the Gaza. And 7, opening permanent humanitarian corridors under the supervision of international community to save what we can save, especially for children. I hope all of the international community doesn't forget our children, doesn't forget our humanity. We trust in you. We trust all of the free peoples. We need to document. We need to compensate our society after they completely destroy our buildings here and they destroy every life sign. So Hazima, keep going, and we will not give up. We have a resilience here in Gaza, even though I still hearing the explosions now in the eastern part of the Gaza, but we will continue with your support, with your solidarity. Thank you, my colleagues, again and again, and big heart from Gaza to your support and to your nice solidarity here. Thank you so much, Hazima.
Ayad, I promise you one thing, we will not forget the children of Gaza. The people of Palestine, the people of Gaza have awakened a global consciousness that we will not only not forget, but we will not stop fighting for. I want to thank my amazing guests for joining me, Dr. Pandour, Omar Shaikh, and Ayad Ammawi, and thank you for the continued work. I just wanted to quickly recap by saying I think the main thing that we've heard from every single speaker here is not only the moral duty, but the action needed in order to end the atrocities. We must continue to mobilize. We must continue to speak out. And Dr. Pandour, I will make note of two important dates, the 28th and 29th of November. There are many global communities that are planning global shutdowns and a global strike. And we invite everyone to join us. We will continue to shut it down for Palestine as we continue to mobilize not only action to end the injustice, but also action to continue to raise awareness and educate folks about the power of the people. And Palestine will be free. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So thank you for joining. And I am going to hand the reins back over to our esteemed guests. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome back to Gaza Power Hour. Thank you so much to Hazami Barmada for guiding that powerful conversation from Washington, D.C. We went to Gaza, we went to South Africa. We heard from Dr. Nelady Pandour, from Omar Shaikh with the Human Rights Watch, from Ayad with the Gaza Relief Committee. Welcome back, my guest in studio, Khalid Al-Qazaz with the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, who's behind one of the main driving forces behind today's conversation. What did you take from that? I mean, so many powerful voices there, and particularly, to me, I'm struck by the solidarity that came from South Africa, from Dr. Pandour, and the importance of that allyship, of learning from the past. Can you talk a little bit about why you wanted to bring her into this conversation?
Yes, Jazakumullah khairan, Janella. The previous segment was actually quite enlightening and useful in many different ways. And I'll start with the last voice, Brother Iyad from Gaza. It's just a continuous reminder that our work does not end by the ceasefire, that our work actually starts and there is more to be done. Previously, things were blocked. People did not have access. Now there is a bigger window of what can be done. Gazans and Palestinians in general have a lot to catch up with, a lot to rebuild, and really it is our work, our actually duty to engage with them in every possible way. And we've listed a few things through the campaigns that we're launching today, and we're asking everybody to subscribe in order to be connected to some of these initiatives. But what also Dr. Pandour and Omar Shakir mentioned is also the work is not done on whether it's continued political pressure or accountability. The work is actually starting, and there is hearing there is a court decision with the International Court of Justice. There are decisions by different political stakeholders and people in the international community, and the new legal framework post this genocide is something that we need to continue to escalate in order to take those who are responsible for the genocide to account. So the work is starting, the commitment is there, and we need this to be the primary drive for everybody to escalate and to engage more. And we invite them to go to CanadianMuslimPact.ca to join this movement and join this work. And I'm looking forward to the next segment.
Thanks so much, Khalid. And as you say, we all had a role to play, and we've been talking about, what is continued to be happening on the ground, the way the international community has and should respond. And we're going to continue that conversation talking about looking at taking courage in action, the people who took their solidarities from the streets to the seas. And we've been talking about loss of homes, of families, of lives. And we're going to continue talking about courage that challenged armies, that defied silence. And we're talking about the Freedom Flotilla and the Global Samud movement, showing the world that resistance isn't just about power, it's about people. It's about those who refuse to let borders or fear stop them from pushing forward to call for justice for Gaza and put those words into action. So we're going to hear from Huwaida Araf, who is a Palestinian American human rights attorney and activist. She's the co-founder of the International Solidarity Movement in Palestine and the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, which since 2010 has been organizing flotillas to break the siege of Gaza. She was on the first boats to break the siege in 2008 and continues today, most recently leading the Handala, which was attacked by Israeli forces in July 2025, and the Conscience, the latest and largest flotilla boat to sail dedicated to journalists and healthcare workers. That was attacked in October 2025. 92 civilians abducted, abused, jailed, and deported. Thank you so much, Huwaida, for being with us. I also want to welcome Dr. Zahira Sumar, who recently returned from the Global Samud Flotilla, and Hannah Clark-Smith, who's a communications coordinator for the Global Samud Flotilla. So all three women whose leadership has reminded the world what conscious inaction looks like. Huwaida, I'll begin with you. Help talk to us a little bit about how you mobilize such a diverse global network of people. And this is something that's been happening for years. I mentioned 2008, your first mission. And, we've seen that people are willing to risk everything for Gaza. I'm not sure if I lost Huwaida's connection. I may go to... Oh, it seems like we've lost the link for all of our guests, so we've just got to come back to studio while we try to get them reconnected. We did have them up there, but we definitely want to take some time to get them back online to speak about their courage. Khalid, you're here with me still in studio. I watched some of what happened with these flotillas, and I'm really just inspired by the courage of these people.
And it's, as you said, Janella, this is very important part of the conversation, because what the flotilla folks did is show the entire world that mobilization, resistance, resilience is coming in different ways and can be done and can be mobilized and can go in ways beyond imagination. So I think it actually took the Israeli forces and the Israeli government and the regime by surprise. It shifted attention to the atrocities in Palestine and Gaza, and everyone's message on the flotilla was basically, it is about the people of Gaza. It's not about the individuals, it's actually about the people of Gaza. Keep your eyes focused there. And I think this is what they did. they actually were able to change and raise the sentiments across all of Europe and many parts of the entire world. And this is what we are asking people to do. Don't lock yourself to old ways. Don't lock yourself to means that are, to algorithms and to powers that are attempting to silence you. Go break these barriers, go break these bonds, and actually attempt to bring the voices of the Palestinians back and advocate and mobilize as much as we can.
I think we may have gotten our guests back. I'm going to try and see if I can connect with our guests who are speaking today about the global flotillas. Huwaida Araf, Palestinian American human rights attorney and activist. Thank you so much for being with us. Talk to us about mobilizing such a diverse global network of people who are willing to risk everything. I mean, the logistics even just around that, but also, you know, was that a heavy lift to convince people when you started back in 2008? Huwaida, can you hear me? I can see you, but I'm not sure if you're able to hear me. Maybe you're not able to hear me. I'm not sure if any of our other guests are connected yet. If folks can let me know if we've got any of our other guests reconnected, and we'll try and connect. Okay, we're trying to reconnect with our guests. I see Huwaida, so that's half the battle. We're hoping we'll be able to hear from our guests. Khalid, while we're here in studio, I'm noting that all three of our guests in this segment are women. And I have to say, I'm so glad to see that we've, you know, given an opportunity to hear from women who often are leading some of these community events. Okay, we may have our guests again. I'm going to try Huwaida one more time. Let's hope third time is the charm, inshallah. Huwaida, can you hear me? And can you tell me a little bit about the heavy lift of mobilizing such a diverse group of people in such dangerous elements, and maybe since you've been doing this since 2008, have you seen a shift in terms of the willingness and who wants to go and is ready to embark on this?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. Let me just jump right in. You know, when we started in 2008, yeah, it was a novel idea that we were going to take a boat and try to sail to Gaza when Israel controlled every aspect of who gets in and out, and our small group of activists didn't have a boat, didn't have money to get a boat, and didn't know the first thing really about operating a boat. But what we saw was severe restrictions. Israel had imposed a hermetic seal on Gaza, which was devastating the economy and which was killing people. Which people could not get the medical attention they needed. You had rising rates of malnutrition, anemia, stunted growth in children and pregnant women, and this was all deliberate. And we had the reporting from humanitarian organizations, and the international community of states was not doing anything about it. Nobody was forcing Israel to change its policies, and we very much believed, again, we were activists and believed that when our governments fail, it is up to us to act. But what were we going to do? The idea came to try to sail a boat, to try to get in via the sea. It seemed like a crazy idea, but people set off to work on it, and after a while we managed to get 2 small fishing boats. We had 44 people. Those were the first group of people to try to sail to Gaza and break the siege. And we weren't carrying humanitarian aid. Our message was, and our message still is, focused on actually breaking the siege, because Israel has no right to control what gets in and out of Gaza. In the end, Palestinian struggle is one about freedom. Back then when we started, there wasn't much social media. And so our ability to communicate widely was restricted, or not as vast as it is today. But we set off in the way that we did. To kind of make a very long story short, we managed to get into Gaza that first time in August 2008. And we managed to make it to Gaza 5 times on a very small boat. Just insisting that we do not accept Israel's illegal blockade, and we are going to confront it. And we do not constitute any kind of security threat, because that's the excuse that Israel always uses on everything it does, all of the violations of Palestinian rights and humanity. And we wanted to expose to the world what lies Israel's basing all of its policies on, and urge the world to act to hold Israel accountable. And that's what we set sail with. We made it to Gaza, but at the end of December 2008, Israel started attacking our vessels. It nearly sank 2 of our boats. We tried a number of times to get in. In the summer of 2009, Israel commandeered our vessels, abducted all of the civilians on board. And at that point, we decided that we needed to escalate. We were a small group of activists, and at that point, we built what is now called the Freedom Flotilla Coalition by networking with groups in different countries and asking them to try to get a boat to join us. In 2010, we had the first massive flotilla, which was lethally attacked by Israel in May of 2010. 10 of our colleagues were killed. But the important thing is that didn't stop the movement. That didn't stop us. We faced over the years a lot of obstacles, including our government's complicity and governments actually working with Israel to try to stop our boats, which we continue to deal with. But more people have been awakened by just the brutality and the evil and the widespread information about what Israel is doing in Gaza. People are frustrated, people are looking for an outlet, and the kind of actions are growing. I think people have been inspired by this idea of taking to the sea, direct action confrontation. And after we sailed one small boat in June of this year, one small boat with 12 people on it, a lot of the eyes of the world were on that one small boat going to confront Israel's blockade. That boat was called the Madlin, and it was done in conjunction with a global march to Gaza and a Samud convoy. We had a message to the world: we all have to break the siege in the way that we can by air, sea, and land. And after that, all of those movements got together in order to plan the dozens of boats that you saw over the past couple of months at sea. And that's only going to grow. More people, I think, are awakened to not only the brutality of what's happening in Gaza, but our role, that each and every one of us has to play a role in bringing this to an end and trying to join in the ways that they can.
Wow. I want to go to Zahira, who just returned from one of the flotillas. Zahira, I know you've been involved as an activist here in Canada for some time, and have taken to the streets, have been involved in lots of different actions, but this is a different endeavor completely. What's it like to go from protesting on the streets, local actions abroad, making a decision to do something like this that is dangerous? We heard Howeida say 10 of her colleagues killed. Making that decision and knowing what you're getting yourself into or trying to prepare for it mentally, and then actually being there and going through what you did. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me, Janella, on the show, and to the rest of the colleagues. I guess we've been in the same space, Janella, and we've seen each other on the streets. We've been in the same communities. This is not something, and I think the same goes for everybody on the Samud Flotilla as well as the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, is that none of us woke up and decided to join a flotilla and jump on a boat and go and risk our lives. This is not something that we just decided one day we're going to do. This is coming after years and years of taking to the streets, years and years of activism, years and years of lobbying. This is us trying to do things in whichever way possible, whenever we could in the past. And so in making this decision, it's kind of like we needed something different. We need to do something drastic. We need to do something that is insane, because what we're seeing is insane, right? So for me personally, when I make a decision like this, yes, it is a decision that every single person who jumped in a boat and decided to go and try and break this illegal siege, you are risking your life. But it is something that's so ingrained into my life as a choice that I want to live this way in fighting for justice, not just for the freedom of and liberation of Palestinians, but for every injustice in this world. It's a choice that we make on a path of life. And therefore, I see it as a life choice. It's not just, a choice that exists now. And when I come back from the flotilla, so my life carries on. It isn't. This path continues, and we choose to live this life in whichever way it presents itself for the fight for freedom and justice, not for one nation, but for all nations, and ultimately for own freedom. And so I think this does resonate with a lot of other people that we had conversations with on the boat, that this is the path that we've chosen in this life. If it comes at the cost of being hurt, being brutalized, or being killed, then so be it. And these are conversations that we've had with our loved ones, with my husband, with my kids, with my parents. And it's not something I've only signed up to. It's something that my family has signed up for as well. So it's a life choice.
Hannah, I want to bring you in because we've heard from Huwaida, these actions starting all the way back in 2008, but to now, it's getting a different level of attention. You were involved in kind of the communications piece around that. How important was that? Huwaida talked about it wasn't just about bringing humanitarian aid, but to actually raise awareness. Can you talk a little bit about that part of it, right? Getting eyes on what you're doing and maybe the different tactics that are used in 2025 than maybe would have been in 2008?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that over the years, as more maritime missions have attempted to break Israel's illegal siege on Gaza, we've become the world has come to see flotillas as a tool. So yes, they are a mission. Yes, the aim is to break the siege, but they're also a tool for awareness, like you said, and also a tool for political pressure. And so from the communications end, when you have people from 47 countries and 462 participants, all of those people have a story, all of those people have an identity and a community and a country. It is supposed to be protecting them and advocating for them and representing them. And so what this mission can become, and what we've seen missions recently become, is a tool to raise awareness for both Israel's genocide on the Palestinian people, for its siege on Gaza, which has obviously lasted much longer than the 2 years that people have been aware of this genocide, but also the complicity of countries that were involved in this genocide and are involved in maintaining the occupation and maintaining the oppression of the Palestinian people, and also maintaining systems of oppression, imperialism, and colonialism elsewhere. And so we really sought to, in this mission, to utilize these stories, to utilize the diversity of our participants, to highlight that this is where people are stepping up where governments have failed, that citizens are putting themselves at risk, that citizens are going on a boat for weeks to say, hey, this is the opportunity for people to step in. This is the responsibility of the free people of the world to say that enough is enough and it's time to step up, and to expose the inaction of governments. And we saw this in the response of governments everywhere, from the governments that refused to advocate for the protection of the flotilla, the governments that advocated only for the protection of the flotilla but not for the protection of Palestinian people, and the governments that even sent naval vessels to protect our mission, but then refused to have those naval vessels actually break the siege. This is over and over and over again. So we use this as a political tool to raise awareness for what is happening in Palestine, to raise awareness for what's happening in Gaza, but also to expose these global systems that are enabling this in the first place.
Huwaida, so many of us, myself included, watch those of you who have embarked on these flotillas and think about just how much courage you have, how much faith that you have, how much just guts to do this, and wish we could be there and do that, but we want to find another way to help instead of just watching from afar. What does meaningful a solidarity look like? How can we turn, our admiration, for what you're doing into action? What can folks watching do? That's questions for Huwaida.
Thank you for that. And I know, we're constantly being told, look, this is courageous or you're brave. And I know I don't, and I think many of my colleagues don't actually feel the same thing at all. But what we feel is that we are determined. And while this might be a risky thing to do because we don't know what Israel is going to do, it is very violent. It has killed 10 of our colleagues and on flotillas, and it has killed many more internationals coming in solidarity with the international solidarity movement and otherwise. And it has killed obviously hundreds of thousands of Palestinians with no accountability. So Israel feels like it could do whatever it wants. And we don't take that for granted. but we don't, I don't feel like I'm brave or courageous. I feel like this is something that I absolutely have to do. And like Dr. Zahira was saying, we have that conversations with our families. And as difficult as it is for my kids, I tell them that I'm doing this, yes, for the children of Gaza and Palestine, but also for their future. Because the world that we're living in now, where you could watch a live stream genocide and our governments want us to feel like we're helpless to do anything about it, like we can't stop it, that is not a world that I want to pass on to them. And so I am determined, and that determination gives me strength. But I know that I'm also just one little part of this global, very powerful movement that is led by Palestinians on the ground in Palestine and joined by all of us in the ways that we can. And so I'm constantly actually saying to people, you don't have to be, and actually we don't need you on boats, because some of the most powerful work that is done to make these flotillas successful and resonate is the work that is done on the ground. So if you people, for example, you may know us because we're organizers, or you've seen us being on the boats, but hundreds of others, if not more, you don't know them, but they are part of making sure those boats actually get to sea, and then thousands and tens of thousands, if not millions more, are making these actions powerful because they're sharing the information, they're calling up their media, they're calling up their representatives, they're demanding that action can be taken, they're organizing in their unions to shut things down if we are attacked, flooding the streets. All of that is part of what makes the flotillas powerful. So you absolutely are part of this. We're all part of this liberation movement, but specifically even the flotilla action, you can be part of it right from your home. And we need so many more people to join that, to continue to make these powerful, because what we know is that, yes, Israel stopped and we weren't able to make it to Gaza, but breaking the siege is more than just about making it to Gaza. And we're determined to sail again and to continue organizing. And we need more and more people to be part of this. So yes, meaningful solidarity, to make sure you are aware and to ask yourself, like, from where I am, what can I do? And each one of us has a role to play. And that's what we need to hold on to each and every day.
Zahira, have you had a chance to hear, do you get any reaction from folks in Gaza, in Palestine, when they hear about the flotillas? How does this impact them, knowing that these global kind of solidarity movements are happening in the face of danger, that they likely will be detained, that they likely will be intercepted and likely won't be successful? Some would say, what's the point if we know we're going to be stopped? Have you been able to get any sort of reactions from folks in Gaza about what this means to them?
Absolutely. I mean, we actually received, while we were on the Sumud Flotilla, we actually received a lot of messages, a lot of videos from Palestinians in Gaza, talking about what this means for them, the hope that it brings. And I think a lot of them use the word hope, right? Hope because they see the world fighting for them, hope because they're not forgotten, hope because we are not stopping, to speak the truth, to rise up, to lobby our governments, to challenge the truth, to challenge things, and that they see us willing to risk our lives, willing to risk things for them, for their liberation, but also for our own freedom. And so there were a lot of messages received. I think while we were on the flotilla, there were so many videos that came out of the Palestinians in Gaza on the shores of the beach, making sandcastles and saying, "Welcome, Global Sumud Flotilla," with welcome signs, children standing there. It was so very heartwarming. And I think the minute that we got intercepted, it was hard. It was hard because, we didn't know, we didn't finish the mission that we started from a physical perspective. We physically didn't finish that part of the mission, although there were successful aspects of the mission in and of itself. But the physical aspect of breaking the illegal siege, it was heartbreaking in that moment, knowing that we are now intercepted. We're not going to be able to complete that. And I think the thing that was most gutting to all of us was thinking about those children and the Palestinians on the beach waiting for us. I think that was the hardest, because it wasn't just about breaking the siege and about delivering physical humanitarian aid. It's about bringing hope to the people of Gaza. It's about reminding them that and showing them that we will never stop. We will not forget. And it's just hard when you can't complete that mission and you're being stopped by the Zionist forces. I was worried personally about the impact that it might have on them, the impact of their hope that we've tried to instill. But yes, we've seen so much love, so much welcome, so much support from them in this time. They showing us love. SubhanAllah, it's amazing.
Hannah, what do you see as next? Where do we go from here? We know that we'll continue to see folks trying to mobilize to break the siege, but as we are in this, quote unquote ceasefire, we know this isn't the end. We know that October 7th wasn't the beginning of what is happening when it comes to injustice in Gaza, and we know that this so-called ceasefire is not the end. And so what do you see as next, and what's the message you want people to take away?
One of the things that I think was a lesson of this summer of flotillas and these very bold attempts to break the siege is how much agency we have as a collective against these systems. And when people saw these boats being intercepted, when they were watching these live feeds, I think they saw themselves on these boats. And I think that also urged them to say, why aren't we doing more? Let's actually confront this. And look at all these little boats that this army, this rogue state is trying to intercept, in this contrast of just people power, and these boats that are getting 25 nautical miles from Gaza, and against this huge military force. And I think this is a reminder of people power. I think this is a reminder of of collective agency, and so I hope that the takeaway, and I think that this also is a big piece of why there was mobilizations all around the world. Right after the interception of the Summit flotilla, there was 1 million people who mobilized on the streets of Rome. There was 300,000 people who mobilized on the streets of Barcelona. Before this, during the entire genocide, I think the most was 70,000 who mobilized on the streets of Barcelona. People are somehow now, 2 years into an escalated genocide, realizing that they have power and capacity to change things. And so my hope and my message is that in the midst of this so-called ceasefire, that people realize that being motivated by the guilt of atrocities is not enough. That this liberation struggle, the Palestinian liberation struggle, is all of our struggle. And until Palestine is free, none of us are free. And so this pursuit it involves bold, big actions that are organized quickly, like these flotillas, and it does. And also, it is the long game. And I think that Dr. Sahira mentioned this earlier. This is the life commitment. And so I think that we have to cultivate within ourselves, we have to cultivate within our communities, this liberation as a way of life. And this is also in a way, Palestine has revealed to us so much of the injustices in the world. It has revealed to us, and so many of the people who maybe were unaware, how their governments are willing to choose a relationship with Israel over their own citizens. It has revealed so much about how international law only applies to certain countries, according to our international institutions. But also Palestine and Palestinian resistance and the history of Palestinian resistance has taught us what it means to say, even in the face of impossible odds, we have to continue resisting. That Samud, the namesake of our coalition, is the thing that we ground ourselves in. And so this is the message. The message is that we can't stop until Palestine is free, until collective liberation is realized, that this is a mission that all of us have a role to play in. This is not a spectator project. Liberation is not a spectator project. This is part of everyday life for everyday people. This isn't just for activists. This is part of being human.
Thank you so much for that, Hannah. That's Hannah Claire Smith, the communications coordinator for the Global Samud Flotilla, also joined by Howeida Araf, who has been trying to break the siege since 2008, and Dr. Zahira Samar, who recently returned from the Global Samud Flotilla. Thank you so much to all three of you for speaking with us. So lovely to see a panel of women who are often leading the charge and doing this community work. And thank you so much. I know you say you don't feel brave, but we are all inspired by you. Thank you so much. And, what we've seen today was such a fantastic conversation from faith leaders to legal experts to those who sailed toward Gaza. They're all trying to speak the same truth, that the world changes when people act with extraordinary courage. And this isn't the end. We know the community will keep mobilizing, will keep organizing, keep amplifying, because justice must be achieved. So we want folks who've been watching, who've been listening, we thank you for your patience and to stay with us for these last 2 hours as we've gone around the world and spoken with folks in lots of different places. I want to come back one more time in studio here to my colleague Khalid Al-Khazaz with the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, who is one of the leading groups behind today's live stream and today's important conversation. Of course, we don't want to just speak. We also want to encourage action. So tell folks one last time what you'd like for them to do as they've been listening to this conversation.
Yes. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So this has been a very inspiring couple of hours for myself at least, and I think many people who are watching, hearing these different voices from different backgrounds, and people are inspired by faith, people are inspired by action, people inspired by the courage of men and women who've put their lives out there and actually their livelihood and changed a lot in their lives to stand for justice. I think these are very important messages that were carried, and we have to build on. I just want to answer the question you posed around women and the movement actually, and subhanallah, many of the faces of the movement for justice for Palestine, starting with Dr. Pandora, who's been with us today, to Francesca Albanese, the Special Rapporteur, and Greta Thunberg, and many of the women who participated in this panel today have led the charge and basically telling everybody that fighting for justice is not a responsibility of a specific profession, a specific gender. It is the responsibility of every human being. It is the responsibility of people who are active, people who are staying at home, and there is room for everybody to do something about it, because really the world is a much more dangerous place if we do not do so. If we do not stand up for justice, if we do not stand up against evil, I think we have ourselves and our children will face a more difficult future. So it is a collective responsibility. It is an individual responsibility. And this stream, this hour that we shared with all of you is about actually showing that everybody can have a role to play. And we've organized this in a way where people can subscribe to our, basically to subscribe to this movement, and basically fill a form where they can simply basically show how can they support Gaza directly, not through organizations that are working on the ground in Gaza in different capacities, education capacity, cultural, social, and even support their ability to be employed and support some of the education and relief activities as well. So these are all on the form that you can access through our website, CanadianMuslimPact.ca. And also, we are running a special campaign for one of the guests that were supposed to be with us today, but was detained by ICE for speaking for justice and speaking for Palestine in America. Brother Sami Hamdi was a British journalist and political commentator. And we're asking everybody to participate in the campaign to demand his immediate release. These are simple steps, simple things to show that we can make a difference. And then finally, this is only an invitation, and it is really about everybody's individual capacity that made a difference and basically managed to put pressure on the Israeli government to pull back. It's not yet over. We have to continue the pressure so that they don't continue to break the ceasefire as they do, to continue to protect our Palestinian brothers and sisters, to continue to take those who were responsible for the genocide to account. We are all witnesses of a genocide that was live streamed, and this is why we will not rest until people are taking, those who are complicit to the genocide are taken to account, and we will continue to help and support and fulfill our duty to support our brothers and sisters in Palestine and Gaza to rebuild their lives again. This is just the beginning, and we will continue to do so.
And we have seen the power of the people, the impact of this kind of community work. I think the conversations we've had in the last year are ones that we couldn't have had 3 years ago. And so I do see the needle changing, and despite the continued suffering of those in Gaza, I think we've opened the door to the conversations at the very least, because for so long much of this suffering was happening in silence. I want to thank my guests who joined us from across the globe, from Gaza to South Africa to the UK to USA, here in Canada, on behalf of CM PACS, Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, as well as the partner platforms, the Thinking Muslim podcast and Islam 21C, as well as you for tuning in, for your patience and staying with us through the technical difficulties of our ambitious live stream. We want to thank you all for being with us for this conversation and keeping this conversation going, for standing for truth, for justice, and for humanity. This has been Gaza Power Hour. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Take care.